Ladies and gentlemen, ATDF everything in that shelf presentation. You're now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome back, everybody.
Hey,
It's me, Daniel,
and it's Ben.
on Spoiled Rotten.
Oh, that chill.
Boom. Well, yeah, usually we spoil TV shows these days, but we do have a new MCU movie.
Hey,
to spoil.
I'm gonna push back on that. We're gonna spoil anything we damn well want to.
Today we are spoiling Thor: Love and Thunder, the fourth Thor movie, the only original Avenger or any Marvel character really to have a fourth solo movie. So
Yes,
it's a big deal.
This is a big deal.
Just up top, it is a pretty simple plot, actually.
It's a very simple plot.
Thor the God Butcher becomes a God Butcher because he has it's been shown to him the gods don't really care, so he has made a point to kill all gods.
Yeah.
He needs to make a wish, so he steals kids from Asgard, so that will bring Thor towards him, and he can use Stormbreaker to open the gate and make that wish.
Yes.
Thor and his friends just want to get those kids back while also not letting Thor open that gate. That is
and kill any more gods.
Yes,
that's
I mean, that is the wish. He wants to kill all gods.
He wants to, yeah. The wish originally is that he wants to kill all gods, and they're motivated by doing this because Thor's all like, "Yo, I'm a god," so like,
I do think that the scene in Omnipotent City shows that he's not just thinking of himself.
Yes, that is 100% true. However, it's one of those situations where he's more aware. It's like, hey, he will eventually come after me.
Yeah, but I think,
he's more doing it to protect other people first, because of course fair. He's like, oh, a lot of my friends went down. Like, this is the nicest god ever. And then you see Sif, and then all this kind of stuff. So it's like, yeah, he's doing it, but in the back of his mind, he'd be stupid to be like, yeah, I'm immune from this. The same way Zeus thinks it, right? He'd be really stupid.
That's I think a parallel to what we live through on a day-to-day. We have people being like, yeah, I'm good with everyone losing their rights and being marginalized. It's not gonna happen to me.
Yeah, I know. I mean, oh god, that I still have such a bad taste in my mouth from that, and never will have a good taste in my mouth from that. That is a shitty thing that happened, and I am sorry.
It's not just one thing, but yeah.
No. I know. I'm just oversimplifying it, obviously, and you're doing the justice that it deserves. But yes, that is.
I think that's what I like. Not like about the movie. I think that's kind of why I brought it up, because I don't think it would be fair to characterize it as Thor is doing it because he's a god and he knows he'll get killed. I think
it's definitely
he has the right intentions here, and he makes the right argument, which is like, none of us are immune to this, and like, obviously to a great extent, he says let's kill all gods. Like, what's to stop him from like realizing, okay, well, yeah, the gods, we're part of the problem, but there's also other shitty people. I'm gonna like set my sights on them. Like, needs to be stopped, because anyone that tries to generalize that way is going to be an issue for people.
Yeah, never paint broad strokes.
Yeah, except for I just did, but
that's true. Never deal in absolutes unless we're dealing in absolutes.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, I think, going into the movie, I didn't even ask if you liked it or not. We'll get to that. But going into the movie, I think I saw a lot of lackluster reviews for it, and I didn't read full-on reviews. I kind of just got sentiment rather than what
you mean, like
they
the
didn't
first, like the headlines of it, and then just didn't read the article.
No, because I was looking on like Letterboxd, so it wasn't really headlines.
See.
It was kind of like 2 to 3 sentence reviews. So yeah, I think I agree with the people that were kind of underwhelmed, but I liked it more than them. It's just I think what we're reckoning with now is not everyone, a lot of people think like, wow, well, Endgame did this, so like we're gonna do that again. And not really letting MCU tell like these singular stories the way they did before they got up to Endgame. Like it all will connect. Like I think I really like Endgame. It's not my favorite MCU movie, but I really like it. It's up there. That all felt great, but that's because it built up on moments that were movies that felt singular, like not like they were like what they were able to mine from Thor the Dark World, or like which we've reviewed on this not on this but on the we revisit movie thing. Like I think that movie in a vacuum you're kind of like meh. And I'm not saying this is the same as Thor the Dark World, but I think we should be letting Marvel just have time to tell these stories that other movies can build off of and incorporate into the fabric of a big event, instead of having the sense that like everything is like immediately like clear how this is building into a big event.
Right.
Having said all that, how did you feel about the movie?
I mean, I have some gripes with it.
Yeah.
It was a very fun ride, as is expected from Taika and Hemsworth together. That pairing together has shown that the comedic aspect of it has been really, really polished. But then to me, I'm like, okay, does the movie prioritize comedy over the emotional beats that we should be feeling? You know what I mean? Like, I think to a movie like...
I've seen that. I didn't agree with it after watching it, and I knew I wasn't going to. I read it and I was like, I don't agree with that, because that's what people said about Thor Ragnarok.
Right.
So I think people are just not. I'm not saying you are. I know that discourse is conditioned to be like, oh, like they made a joke, so it undercut this, and I'm like, that's. I don't. My favorite kind of movie is we're telling jokes, but something really sad is happening.
Yes,
like the movie Life, which is Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence, is about two men that lose. Not they don't die, but like they lose their lives because they get sent to prison for life because someone pinned a murder on them.
Right.
And it is dealing with two black men found with a white dead cop, or like, or at least an injured white cop and a dead man. So it's like, it's not really grounds for a bunch of humor, but I'm able to laugh and have a great time feeling the emotions these people are feeling and understand that they are using humor to get through this very trying time.
Yes.
And I think both Ragnarok and Thor Love and Thunder do that.
And I mean, thematically it kind of works, but I'm just getting to the point where I'm like, and maybe this movie was doing it to make a point, right? We see Thor, and you correctly pointed this out during our rewatch episodes, that Thor's inherent personality is not the serious character they try to build him into in Thor 1 and 2. That's why it didn't work, right? That's why every time you saw Thor,
he's still doing things that are funny because he is always not always, usually his pomp is in conflict with the actual situation, and that's funny. But they weren't trying to harness that. They were still trying to make it this very serious thing. But I can see how you get from him in those two movies to Ragnarok.
Yes. But my point of this was like in Thor Ragnarok and this, it's very, very clear that Thor has ended up using humor as a defense mechanism, something I identify with quite a lot, right? So a lot of this is, okay, I think about this from a meta standpoint. Does Taika choose to make a lot more jokes, maybe pushing past the really emotional beats really, really quickly, as a way of reflecting that, his defense mechanism of being like, yeah, I'm trying to hide these emotions, because like toward the end of the movie, he does not do that anymore, right? And that's where the comedic beats really, really stop.
That's why I didn't agree with there's too many jokes. I'm like, I don't even really know of a bunch of jokes by like the last 40 minutes, and it's not it is an hour and 59 minutes, so like that's not an insignificant piece of film.
That's a huge amount of time, right? So that's what I was saying. Like, I feel like his decision to make it like that in the first two acts is like, yeah, that's a visual way of showing, or not a visual way, sorry. It's a mechanism of showing us like, yeah, his defense mechanisms are being torn down. He's being very genuine now. He's doing all these kind of things.
Thor
right?
and Jane.
And I like that. Yes, Thor and Jane as well.
Jane is very jokey at the beginning, and I didn't feel like it was weird. I understood.
Oh, I understand.
I mean, that's the benefit of having an actor like Natalie Portman.
Yeah.
You can see in her face that she's scared and upset while she's making her jokes. Like it's always present. That's what I'm saying. Like I think we had a similar issue with people's discourse about Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. Not in it's too jokey, but just that people can be obtuse about their criticism, like not factor in what they're actually watching, and just be like, joke, no, too many jokes. Oh, another joke, no, too many jokes, and like, or Wanda's a bad guy now. What? Come on, what's going on? It's like, well, did you watch what was happening?
Pay attention.
Were you paying attention from like the first time we met that character, or Jane,
or like throughout the
Jane
whole
very clearly not being happy about what's going on, but wanting to feel like thing, and her saying specifically like, Darcy, you're the only one that knows because I know everyone else is going to act weird, and you can even see Darcy is acting weird, so she's probably already regretting that. Like, I don't think it's fair to say regretting, but I think she's already sensing like, look, this was the person that was supposed to be the most okay with it, and she's not. Like, I'm gonna just keep this up then.
You know what the worst part is? The person that actually treats her regularly is Eric Selvig.
He's just like being like, look, this is the case. This is what's happening.
He's very factual. He's like, this is the extent of the cancer. This is what's happening. I'm sorry, there's not a lot of treatment. I'm sorry, Jane. Please let me know if there's anything I can do. As far as I'm concerned, that's as far as his involvement with Jane was in the first two movies. So like, it's like, okay, good. Like, here's an Eric Selvig cameo. Cool. I don't care about the guy, but just
he's the only one that actually that I cared about much later in the film. But
there's definitely that. But the Eric Selvig one did not care about. For sure.
Again, he is part of the Thor franchise, so it made sense to see him again. Like, it wasn't.
Yeah. Oh no,
I know we've talked about how much I don't like him, but like, I wasn't like, oh my god, this guy again. It's like, makes sense. Not, this is someone that probably was kind of a mentor to her. Like, that's how we meet him in the first. I think it makes sense that he would be involved in her storyline like this.
Yes, absolutely. And to the extent that he was, right, there's a very, very big awareness about like, okay, we're not going to use a lot of Selvig here.
I don't even think he was trying to do anything. But he is a sobering presence.
Correct.
The way he was mostly used in the first movie. Like, it was just a sobering, like, okay, like, this is what's actually happening. Like, just bare bones. And I think that's kind of the microcosm of the movie, right? Like, a bunch of jokes with Jane until she gets hit with like, well, this is actually what's happening.
The hard truth.
The movie is like front loaded with a bunch of jokes, which makes sense because of what our main characters are going through. And then there's a point where that has to all get dropped and you just have to deal with what's happening.
Absolutely. Because I think about how smart that is, because let's put in context who Thor has been slinging the galaxy with for the past like 4 months, let's say, like in undisclosed amount of time. He's been with the Guardians. And let's be perfectly honest here, Chris Pratt is the quintessential man boy in Star-Lord. So the idea that, Thor got comfortable being a child, being like, even the fact that Thor's like, I'm gonna give you your ship, and it's like, wait, you're gonna give me my ship, the one that I own? Yeah, I'm gonna give it to you. This is something I'm gonna impart to you. Like, the fact that he's still playing that, like, oh, I'm the alpha, or like, there's a childishness there that had to be further developed, right? Because even Chris Pratt says, like, hey, buddy, for a 1,000-year-old being, you don't seem to know who you are. And it's because he keeps doing things like deflecting and making jokes and doing all that kind of stuff. Same thing that Jane does, is like, the moment I can pick up Mjolnir and be healed by that, I'm going to keep picking it up over and over because I don't want to deal with the fact that I actually have cancer. It's very, very poetic. And I really don't agree with a lot of people saying that. I can understand why they would, but I'm like, this isn't that kind of movie. You're not dealing with a Spider-Man No Way Home where we're dealing with Maria, like, what's her face's death for like without Aunt May's death, without music, without whatever. I'm like, no, this is a movie that clearly is more interested in fitting more Guns N' Roses songs into the soundtrack than anything else, which I am slightly disappointed that the Guardians franchise didn't rub off on them on the Thor franchise and diversify the soundtrack a little bit more. Just saying. There's a lot of good 80s era music that could have been borrowed off this. They just chose Guns N' Roses.
I only saw the one, obviously, I've only seen it the one time, but I did see a headline for an article that I was going to read later because my whole thing was for this spoiler review. I wasn't going to read or see anybody's opinion on it other than obviously what I'd seen by like social media reactions.
Right.
But they did say that I think it does actually rub off on this franchise because they're saying those specific songs are telling a story within the story. It is a narrative. So I haven't read what that is. I'm not a Guns N' Roses fan. Like I know their hits of their hits, but like so I don't know. Like I wasn't really like I would hear it and be like, yeah, okay, I know. I get that.
Cool. There's Sweet Child
calls himself Axel and stuff. Like I get that they are a very again, I can't say that's stupid because it's very clear that what is integral to the story is this Guns N' Roses thing, right? That this is important to the story, and for them to map out a story using the song and the sequence that it's in, I think that says something. I don't know what it is yet. Again, I'm not a fan or whatever, but I can't say that's stupid because it obviously wasn't just, oh, I like these songs.
Right. Okay, let's say it wasn't. I'm going to pull back and not say it's stupid, but I was disappointed in the fact that the Guardians franchise didn't bring the diversity of soundtrack to it. Because remember, the first Taika one with Thor was like, okay, cool, there's Immigrant Song. Like 2 pin drops of Immigrant Song. Way better than the Nirvana thing from the Batman thing. But even then, I'm like, okay, cool. All right, there's a theme. So my thing is like, if we see Thor 5 and Taika's behind the helm again, I'm like, are we going to expect one song thematically as the whole movie again? That's going to bother me a little bit.
I mean, that's fair. That wouldn't bother me because it shows that you've got an actual plan. It's not just, oh, I'm doing what James Gunn does. But
that's fair. I just wanted some of that element to rub off on the Thor thing. It did a little bit, but not nearly enough as I would have liked.
I think seeing that headline makes me want to push back, but since I didn't read it, I can't really say anything. But I would say
that's fair.
If there was an actual plan and we see how those songs specifically connect to it, then I understand why it wasn't just, oh, these are just a style of music from the 80s, and specifically this band, these songs mean something.
It's funny because this movie is about building family and building community, but Axel and Slash never got along after the first album again. So it's like, wait, what?
So what I would say is, even you saying that, like, the whole thing is Thor and Jane had something special, which this movie doubles down on, and then never really came back together until this movie, and still
that is a good point.
So that's what I'm saying. Like,
that's a very good point.
It's a very specific reason why that's in there, right?
It's very intentional. I'm just saying I would have liked a little bit more diversity, but the way you're arguing it, it makes me like your way more. Like,
I think it's the only way to look at it, right? Like, it doesn't really. Everything you were saying is proving this article's headline's point, right? That it's very intentional why this is being used, and it's not just, hey, we went for an era of music. There's a very specific story here, right?
Yeah, we're not doing hair metal, we're not doing Motown, we're doing, this is a Guns N' Roses thing. There's symbolism behind this.
And I think more specifically than Find Your Family, it was Find Love, right? The end of the Gore, Jane and Thor fight is, how dare you turn your back on me, and Thor being like what am I gonna, like, the woman I love is dying, what am I gonna do, watch you? Or even if I die, what am I gonna do, watch you or be with the person I love? Like, I would rather have love in my life than
even if it's like for fighting, 5 more minutes.
Sure. So I think,
and I agree with that. I totally agree with that. It's like, you already won. Like, we couldn't stop you from getting here. You got here. The technicality is you meet eternity, you get one wish. So him doing that toward the end, it was I loved it. He was finally
Mhm.
like, I'm gonna be in the present. I'm gonna stop deflecting. Oh God, I loved it so much. It was so sad though. So sad.
And I think I haven't seen what people said, but I thought like this is I see so many people always complain, especially about Doctor Strange, about like, why didn't you just tell Wanda, you know how to like find her kids or whatever? They don't
Why
like that they
didn't you
fought it, and I'm
just?
like, this is it then. Like, I'm interested to see if people hate this ending because it's like, well, this is the good guy being like, hey, look, logically, emotionally, this is what should be happening instead of you making this wish to kill a
Mhm.
bunch of gods. And I think that, as we both kind of are hinting at, that's really good, and like really good writing in terms
Yep.
of like it, it feeds back into this whole like choose love instead of
Mhm.
uh you know hate. I don't even know if it's hate, but like choose love instead of nothing. Like because that's what
Instead
Star
of
Lord is saying, right?
anger,
Like
right? Yeah.
wouldn't you rather have given yourself into the love and then feel shitty than to just feel empty all the time?
Yeah. Better to love and lost to have never loved at all.
And that's
Um,
Gore's arc as well. Like you feel empty, like you're doing all this killing but you don't feel anything. Like this isn't bringing your daughter back. You could just bring your daughter back,
mhm.
have that love.
I think the argument always there is, for me at least, how bad was Necrosword, the all black Necrosword, actually corrupting him, right? It was very, very clear. It was like, oh, it's corrupting his soul. It's doing this. So I'm like, okay, maybe it was like once the sword was destroyed, that was the only way he could actually listen to reason, right? So
Oh,
I'm like, I'm not going to
I can
hate it
agree with
against
that.
that. Yeah.
No, I can agree with that. I think, yeah, the sword obviously was his source of power, and it was keeping him alive. Literally, they
Yes.
said like, I mean, once you break that, like
he did.
yeah, and that is what happens.
That's literally what
literally
happened.
goes like, oh, I'm dying. Like,
oh, I'm dying. And I'm like, oh man, that was right on the nose. It wasn't like he started de-aging or anything. It wasn't a cool effect. It's like, oh, I'm dying. And that disappointed me a little bit. I wanted him to start rapidly
but like
aging.
I don't know why he would rapidly age. The whole point was he was already on the brink of dying before he met that god and got the sword.
Fair.
It was like
but
his daughter went and then he was about to go, but then he found the thing. I felt like he was just in limbo in that scene and then took the sword, and that's what was keeping him alive. So yeah, like he
I like
didn't
the sword
have a lot of
chose
time.
him, but
The sword called to him, yes.
Yeah.
But like I mean, they didn't lean into the Venom symbiote stuff, but it makes sense that it's like,
I'm
wow,
glad
this person has all this hate in them, like an Eddie Brock. Yeah,
and the
let's do
symbiote does
this.
corrupt him.
Yeah.
For those listeners who are not aware, the all black Necrosword is tied to a character named Null. Null is I guess, the father of the symbiote world, in the sense.
He's a god for sure.
He's
like
a god.
yeah.
He's the god that creates the all black Necrosword, and the all black Necrosword has ties to symbiotes and therefore the Spider-Man franchise. Now, they didn't lean into that. I'm glad they didn't, because they would have opened up a big can of worms. I think there was a Null reference in the sense where there was a voice that called out to him, and I'm like, that could be Null. Cool. I'm good with that.
And I feel like the movement that happens with the sword, you could be like, yeah, that kind of looks like when the symbiotes take over a body. Like,
yeah,
all of that's fine. Like, just leave it the way. I'm 100% on board with what you're saying in terms of like, if you know, you can read into things, and that's fine. But it also isn't trying to like move away from what needs to happen in the movie.
Yeah. It is not a symbol that the Sony universe is playing nice with. It's not that.
Or
please don't read into that.
They're trying to like expand that part of the universe in this movie. Like I
doubt it's that.
Yes, no, that's what I'm saying. Like I think that it was good enough to give you a taste if that's what you're looking for, without ever being distracted with like, oh, I guess we got to explain this lore. And because all you need to know in that moment is that sword will corrupt him. It called to him in a pivotal moment. And it gave him the powers to do what he does.
Yeah, very much exactly like spoken like a real symbiote. The symbiote chooses the person, gives them powers, all that corrupts them, all that kind of stuff. So, and the entire time with all the black like tentacle things, the entire time I'm like, oh man, I would love to see a Venom movie with that effect. Like that looks so much better. Because the entire time I'm thinking, like, if they're doing symbiote stuff, they're just not doing it on the nose. They know what they're doing. And it looks great. Yeah. It looks absolutely fantastic. And I'm like, oh man, I would love Venom if he looked like that. Because the one thing about Venom that I don't like, aside from the lack of logo, but is the shininess on him. It's weird. I don't like the shininess. I like how this black was not as shiny and very matte. It very just sucked up light from everything, that saturation of color. And of course that was intentional, but it was beautiful. I loved it. Make this Venom. Ha! But okay. That's Thor. What it is. Back to Thor though.
Back to Thor. Yeah. So I guess we should start going through the characters.
Yes, let's.
I think the movie did kind of start off rocky for me because I was kind of the Guardians feel really flat in this.
Yes, they do.
I think the person who pops in that scene is the king. That was kind of like, well, yeah, this is our like ancient temple and they're ruining it. And like Thor goes in there and ruins everything. And he's kind of like, I don't want to talk about it. You're talking about it and it's making me angry. And that guy was amazing. I love that guy.
That's Will Forte, isn't it?
No, it's not. But
really?
Like, yeah, it's not Will Forte. But
no, like, it's got to be one of those SNL actors.
I looked him up. He's not a. Really? I don't know the person. Yeah, I don't know the person.
I swear to God, I thought that was Will Forte.
No. But yeah,
wait, maybe not. Might not be Will Forte. Who's the guy that does Last Man on Earth? Is that Will Forte?
Yeah.
Okay. I swear to God, it was him. I swear he gave me that energy. But anyways,
I mean, he's great. That's why I looked him up. But yeah, it's not. That's not who it is.
Highly disappointing. I thought it was. But I mean,
it's disappointing. That's just great that someone else can pop. That's not already a known quantity.
That is true. He did a good Will Forte impression there. But yeah, I love that. It's like, yeah, I don't want to talk about this. It's making me angry. It's like, yeah, I think we should talk about it. I don't want to talk about it.
Like, if we were to talk about it, it would be important for you to know. He's like, you're just making me angry. I don't. And I love that they're like, and as a gift, as a customary gift, here are these two goats that are great. And now that you've accepted them, you have to keep them. You definitely accepted them.
It's so good. They just keep screaming for no reason.
Yeah, I love the goat screaming as well.
So good. I thought I was gonna get bored of it. I'm like, no, every single time I was like, this is fucking
It was
hilarious.
Always funny to me.
It was so good.
I
want that to be a ringtone now.
It was just something about the Guardian energy that felt flat, which is fine. They're not an important part, and I understand putting them in the trailer because Star-Lord basically gives the thesis of the movie, which is you should just give in to the love and not feel like
find your family, bro. Yeah.
I mean,
or find your
the only reason I don't think it's specifically or that it's specifically loving another like human as opposed to a family community thing is he like Star-Lord is with his family and he talks about the loss of his love that really hurt, which clearly is
right. Gamora, yeah.
And that idea that he feels shitty, but at least he feels. Because if it was just find your family, and I think that's why when he says look at the people you love, it's like the individual shots. It is talking about like one-on-one connections, and it doesn't have to be obviously. I mean, in this case, this was structured somewhat like a romantic comedy, so it is probably romantic love he's talking about, but you can still have love for someone without it being romantic. But I do think it was like actual one-on-one connections, because I think in a community we're dealing with that on Ms. Marvel, which I almost called Kamala Khan again, but we're dealing with that on Ms. Marvel. And I think in that you can still be within yourself because you know you've got the insulation of the community versus actually opening it up and connecting with one person.
Right. There's love in community, but there's vulnerability in one, right? That I guess that's what they're saying is like you're never
that's what Valkyrie's doing as well. She's in the community, but she's still feeling isolated.
Oh, heavily so. Yeah. I love how they're showing that with Valkyrie, and I can't wait to talk about her. But yeah, the Guardians definitely fell flat for me. Definitely didn't have that energy behind Guardians,
but it was good.
Don't know if that was
it was like, okay, good, all right.
don't know if it was actually more related to the fact that I don't enjoy Chris Pratt anymore. You know what I mean? It's like, oh no. Yeah, but whatever. I mean,
could be. I mean, I obviously, yes, there's the Chris Pratt of it all, but in the movie, I was just like, I mean, he's saying the important part.
Yes.
He didn't feel the whole, like, what I liked about them in Infinity War, which I understand it would be silly to just recreate that again in this movie, was that Star-Lord Peter Quill is also playing into what Thor is doing. He didn't seem like he was doing that here. Like he seemed like he enjoyed when Thor took things serious. Like he just seemed grown up, I think is what I'm saying. And that doesn't
he did.
Guardians as a whole feel flat. It doesn't make him feel flat. I'm just saying he's actually felt grown up. So it was like what felt flat was like these interactions where like Thor is clearly still doing, as you said, like, I'm going to give you your ship, or we're going to do a human handshake, Asgardian handshake, into the snake, into a Asgardian high one. Like, Chris isn't, or not Chris, but Peter isn't playing into that. He's kind of
he's not.
Like, all right,
it's like, what the
whatever.
Fuck?
And the only time I like the Guardians is when they all have a moment of being like, all right, let's go now. Like, let's get it's time to, we finally got rid of the guy. He's annoying. Let's go now.
Yeah.
I liked that. I also kind of liked when Groot was laughing at Kraglin for getting married, and he said,
"Groot." That was great. That was like, we talked about this, Kraglin. You can't do this on every single planet. Yeah. I know. I gotta close myself off a little bit. That was so funny. I like that a lot.
I mean, but again, it seems like a joke, but it is showing like Kraglin isn't closed off.
No, he's not.
Very much like into connecting.
He's very codependent on Yondu.
Well, I wouldn't even say codependent because he's not.
No, I would heavily say he's codependent. I mean, if you're marrying someone on every single planet, you're highly codependent there, and you have a attachment style. Like, you can't just marry. I don't think people.
For the purposes of the movie, that's what they're saying. I think what they're saying is he is open, he is feeling things, he is in a better place than the people who are not open and trying to guard themselves.
Yes.
I
mean, that's fair.
Yes, but I think that's what they're saying. Yeah. I think without seeing how he interacts with these people, I can't, like, that's using like Earth rules. He's someone who travels all over the place. I don't know what that looks like, so I can't say, oh, he's codependent, because he's actually not really like, come on guys, he wasn't like, I hope you guys are okay with this, or he's like, we're married, I met her, I love her, like we're together now. It seems like maybe he needs to slow down because it's annoying the team, but like it feels like he's like, well, I'm having a good time, like I like my life.
Yep.
But yeah, I think so. That was kind of a rocky start to the movie for me, because I was like, like the Guardian stuff I thought would be more fun. Not that I was like, I wish there was more of it, because I understand it. Like, it is good comic book stuff. That I think that was the silver lining for me, which was like, this is a comic book. Like, last time we saw them, they were together, and now they're dropping them off. Like, I'm glad they didn't just skip over that and be like, oh, well, yeah, I was with them. Like, you get to see it, so that's nice. And it felt like an adventure, like not just what they did, but like the idea that they had to part ways because it was like, oh, okay, well, we'll go here, you go find Sif or whatever. Like, they're still technically working on the story, but like, we don't need to follow them. And I liked that idea. And I think my overall thing I kept coming back to is like, I wish the first Thor was this fun. Like, because it doesn't feel like an improvement on sorry, I don't even remember what I was saying. I think it was something about like I wish the first Thor was this fun, because like, that one's kind of just stuck in New Mexico. And this didn't feel like an improvement on Ragnarok, but it felt at least like it had the same fun energy.
It was a lateral move to Ragnarok. I think it was on the same beats, same everything, and that's why people are a little bit critiquing this. But I mean, like, you're right though. The first Thor is just not fun. It's too small, it's too close, and it's trying to take him too seriously. And then the bleached eyebrows are just the worst part of it, right? So I will never stop shitting on those eyebrows. But yeah, like fundamentally different movie. But yeah, I do wish the first Thor was like this. But to be fair, at that point, it's like establishing what a comic book movie looks like was different, because they were still held back by like, oh, this is what a main protagonist looks like, and not truly able to figure out how to have multiple people interact.
One of the best parts for me in the first Thor movie is when they go to Jotunheim. Is that where the frost giants are?
Yes.
And like you see how like arrogant Thor is, and he's kind of just like, oh, is that all you got? But it was like the idea that they were going different places and like having a journey. So even if you get sent to Earth, like maybe he has to like take a trip to get to where Mjolnir is, like just more movement instead of feeling boxed in. I think is more what I'm saying, because everything you're saying is true, but it was more like, I get it, this is the first time we're seeing him. They wanted to do the story of him becoming worthy, but it all felt so like it was happening on one block in a town. So that felt but yeah, I think that's the Guardians.
The Guardians were there. Let's talk.
I guess we can talk about Valkyrie.
Yeah, let's talk about Valkyrie. I was going to say the exact same thing. King Valkyrie, clearly not happy with the administrative side of the job.
Yeah, she wants to be a warrior again.
She wants to be a warrior again. I love that for her. I love that she's able to say that. Love that she's able to do that. But I love that apathy that she brings to the character. Who, like, when she's even doing the Old Spice commercial, like she's not into it, but she's like, yeah, I'm doing this just because this is what my people need me to do, right? She's like, no, I love that speech she gives. It's like, no, I love my people, I love my community, but this is the culture I'm raised in. Going to Valhalla is the most important thing ever, right? So yeah, I have to die. I have to have that selfishness
in battle. Because that was a Sif beat that I thought was funny, where I thought that was hilarious. So basically what separates the Guardians from Thor is that they see all these videos of people getting killed by Gore, and he sees Sif, and they're kind of like, all right, well, go find your friend then. And he goes there, and she's kind of like, at least I'll go to Valhalla, this is great. And he's like, I mean, you kind of have to die in the battle, and you survived, so maybe your arm is in Valhalla. I don't know.
That was ridiculously funny to me. It's like, and then the fact that like this is a moment where I'm like, in any other kind of situation, I'm like, this is a dying scene. She's dying, but you're like, technically,
it's like, you might want to hold on. And I thought it was a fake out, because like she did have an interview where she was kind of like, yeah, I don't really have much to do. You'll see why. And I was like, oh, they're killing her. But that, because like that's part of the Korg narration, where he's like, and then she killed this guy and this guy, and it's like, oh, like they're gonna just kill us if the way they killed off the Warriors 3. But it was kind of like, no, you probably should stay alive, because this won't get you into Valhalla. She's like, oh, all right then, shit.
I love her response, like, really? Damn it, no. That was so good. Like the idea that someone like, you could be very well dying on the battlefield, and you're just gonna casually slide that technicality into their brain. It's just like, yeah, don't die right now, because if you do, you're not getting into Valhalla.
This is
on a technicality. On a technicality. That's ridiculous. It's so funny though.
But I'm glad she didn't die. I mean, they still don't really know what to do with Sif, but at least they didn't kill her.
I mean, they can't do anything with her. I mean, she's written out of the Thor movies, essentially, in the sense where it's like, hey, Thor and her are never going to get along. And that's basically what she's there to do, alongside fight the Warrior with the Warriors 3 and all that kind of stuff. So it's just like, she's not going to be an important enough, like, and it really depends, right? And we'll talk about more of this toward when we get to the end, the mid-credit scene and all that kind of stuff. What does it mean? But it's just like, are they putting her in just because, like, hey, she's from the Thor franchise, you remember her? Or like, we needed to explain that we did not forget about her in Ragnarok. Which of the two do you think it was?
Like, yeah, like we didn't forget about her.
Gotcha.
She's still here.
Yeah, fair enough.
But yeah, Valkyrie is, I mean, she has that like heart to heart with the face of Korg, where it's kind of like, so you're basically you're just instead of leaning into love again, you're just gonna try and hide your emotions, and they're at the bottom of a bottle. And she's like, yep. He's like, huh, all right. But I think that's fine. Like she's not at the place that Thor got to in terms of keeping up that coping mechanism.
I mean, a lot of people have different coping mechanisms. Some have alcohol, some have jokes.
Yes.
I am definitely telling you of the people that have used both, jokes is much better.
Yes.
Because jokes does not turn you into an alcoholic asshole. Not that I was, but it's still a possibility that could have been. Either way, make jokes, don't drink.
So yeah, the Valkyrie obviously is jumping at the idea of like, oh, we can go fight now.
And I can die in battle. This is great. Yeah. I get her motivations. I understand it.
She's all in.
All in, baby.
I don't know if there's more to talk about with Valkyrie. I liked her.
There's really isn't, to be honest.
But I did like her just immediately getting on board with Jane.
Yeah. Oh God,
I guess we'll talk about Jane next. But like, I think just even that thing of like, what am I seeing here? And he's, what do you mean? And he's like, what do you have feelings for her? She's like, don't worry, we're on the same team. He's like, good, I know what team we're on. And Valkyrie's like, yeah, Team Jane.
That was awesome when she's like, yeah, Team Jane.
But I like that even when Thor was like, who's this guy? She's like, oh, you're gonna love this. And it's just like, yeah, like Valkyrie's all in on Jane. But yeah, we can finally get to the Jane of it all, which is I didn't read the run. I've never read Thor, but I knew of the whole, like, there was a new Thor, female Thor, and for a bunch of issues you didn't know who it was. Turns out it was Jane Foster. And that she has cancer, and every time she kind of like wields Mjolnir, it's draining her ability to fight the cancer. So it's like a constant reset. Or not even reset, but it's making things worse.
Yeah. So what, like in that, like I think I forget which run it is. It's the most famous run of the Mighty Thor. But yeah, you're exactly right. There, she's got cancer. Mjolnir purges the chemo from her every time she picks it up. And in that, it's important to recognize too that Thor is unworthy and is the one that has only one arm.
Yes.
In that story. So I think they did the Lady Sif thing, but like I don't know why they just took away her arm, and then like it was weird. Anyways, so they did that. He's the one that he's unworthy. He only has an arm, and then she's the one that wields Mjolnir because Odin's son goes like, "Hey, Jane, need your help. Need you to protect Asgard, and therefore you are Thor." And
I liked this better. That
this version better, I like it
was
better.
Like
she gets drunk in a hawk dog costume.
She was like, oh, the chemo isn't working. That's what everyone's saying.
Yeah.
And I know that Darcy was saying it as like, why don't you just kind of like
rest,
enjoy time with Thor, which is what Star-Lord was saying as well. But she's kind of like, she takes it as like, well, I can take a look at that culture and see if there's anything that could help me. Like she's like, I did the science, what about some space Viking magic? And realizes Mjolnir could help her, and just like the Necro Sword, the Mjolnir calls to her. So she goes to New Asgard, and the pieces come together, and we learn that was the case because Thor kind of did an enchantment that was like, just always protect her. Mjolnir, you have to keep her safe.
The thing I like about that sequence when they did Korg got to do a narrative thing over the relationship again was actually seeing their relationship. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because you never got to see. And I was like, wait, how did I'm like, I guess there was time, because you only hear that they broke up in Ragnarok, which is there's enough time between Thor 1 and Ragnarok for them to have these moments. We just never got to see them. So yeah, I did appreciate seeing that.
Yeah, I really liked seeing that relationship. I liked seeing them awkwardly stumble about like, oh, you ran into your ex. How am I going to communicate to this person? And all this kind of stuff, right? That they did that very, very well. And then the idea of like, I like how Jane pushes back on him. And like, I like how Korg narrates how the relationship basically fell apart was the idea that they both committed to their own things and weren't able to commit to each other long term and just put those barriers up, right? It was very, very easy to understand reason why they broke up. It wasn't malice, it wasn't anything like that. It was just that they were not able to communicate anymore. And I liked that a lot. I really, really did.
As you said, when she pushes back, because Thor was like, well, because you left me. And she's like,
yep.
What do you mean?
What do you mean?
He's like, I was there. I saw it. She's like, but you weren't there to see it. So if you weren't there to see me leave, then maybe you're the one that left. He's like, we both left and we both got left.
Yeah. And I love how he goes like, okay, fair point. Yeah. And I'm like, yeah, because that's perfectly valid. If you weren't there while she was leaving, you're the one that technically left. That's a very, very valid point. And I like how, like, in the second Thor, she's like, oh, where were you? It's been X amount of months or whatever. It's just like, well, I've been putting together the 9 realms and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh, okay. So after that, you didn't have a conversation about being unreliable or whatever. It was the whole thing, like the breakup makes sense to me fully. It makes sense to me why hasn't moved on. Right, when he goes like, oh, it's been 8 years, 5 months, all this kind of stuff. I'm like, yep, it makes perfect sense why you haven't moved on. And I love every aspect of the Jane thing.
And I like that she just loves being a Thor. Like she's trying out new catchphrases, but also when she's in the bed
the catchphrase thing was good. Yeah,
the very serious part of it of like, look, if I'm dying anyway, like, why would I spend it in a bed like this? Like,
yes,
I can go out. And I saw people, we can talk about the last post-credit scene now, like people being like, that was stupid. I mean, I was just happy to see Idris Elba. I was like, well, I didn't think this guy was going to come back, but I saw a thread that I was like, that is very meaningful, which was for the movie, but for people who have had lost people to cancer. It was like, sorry, yes, but Jane dies because she's not supposed to use Mjolnir anymore, and she does, basically draining anything, as you said, like it just took away
purging
all
the chemo. Yeah.
And so they were basically, if she uses Mjolnir again, she's gonna die. So when she shows up to save Thor, choosing love, but also like, just choosing love, they have an unspoken acknowledgement of like, this is goodbye. But like, the end credit, so like the actual post credit, not mid credit, is Jane being welcomed into Valhalla with
Idris Elba's Heimdall.
And I saw people being like, that's stupid, and even trying to pick apart like, well, she didn't die in battle, she died after the battle, like Civ. But earlier in the movie she did, but earlier in the movie, you see her mom died of cancer, so just keep fighting. And the idea was she was battling cancer, like that was the battle.
That's what I was gonna say. Like the battle wasn't with gore, it was with cancer, and she died to cancer, and she was the hero.
So there's this beautiful thing of like all these characters who say they want to get into Valhalla, but aren't yet. Like, I'm not saying they're never going to. I'm not saying Valkyrie not. But she was on her own path to Valhalla without ever vocalizing that was something she wanted to do.
Correct.
But it was this nice thing of being welcomed into, and through Moon Knight, Black Panther, we're seeing all these different afterworlds, and she goes to Valhalla because that was the culture she was part of. She actively helped Heimdall's son. She actively was a Thor in that moment. So it made sense that that's where she goes. But I liked that is a very real battle. And that brings it down to earth, and not like your battle doesn't have to be fighting someone with a sword or some super villain. And so I really appreciated that. I thought, yes, I'm happy to see it yourself, but it was like a very nice way of continuing this other idea that was happening in the movie of wanting to go to Valhalla.
I'm glad
that is people wanting to find peace. Like, and so people are arguing like you can find peace in just being in love.
Yes.
And then there were the people that like Valkyrie were like, I mean, I think my peace is gonna just be dying with purpose. And like you get this other thing that was never really being beaten over our heads, I don't think, but is there to see. I think everyone else saw it, which was she had this battle, and this was the payoff to that.
It's the idea too, like when when Thor leaves her in New Asgard to be like, here, take the chemo and all this kind of stuff, and like you stay here, I'll go fight and all this kind of stuff, and they're having that discussion. She's like, no, I'm choosing love. I'm choosing to defend the one I love.
Mm-hmm.
It's everything that's beautiful. It's everything that's poetic. It's the idea that I can't fight for myself. I have to fight for others. You know what I mean? That's true love. So her doing that, her sacrificing herself essentially to save Thor and save Gore and save all this kind of stuff. That was her reward. It was like her battle was with cancer. It's always been. I don't understand. Yeah, for this movie, I don't understand why people were pushing back on that. It's like, oh, she died of like just like Sif. I'm like, no, she died of cancer. She died of the fight, and she was just in this place. She was with eternity.
I do think that it's what I've kind of been complaining about now, which isn't the movies themselves, but the discourse with them. And what I see is people being very obtuse, right? So like
that's true. That's very true. People are like, not even arguing the points anymore.
Like seeing a bunch of headlines being it's too funny. And I was like, I didn't like, and I'm not saying that this is bad, but I didn't find anything that funny, like with 40 minutes left in the movie. Like it's not like like it felt like it had an arc. So they kind of front loaded it with the humor, and as we talked about, that was because that's a defense mechanism, and then it gets dropped when they have to deal with things for real. I think
it's a very poetic way of writing it.
To think that this was just a way of like, I don't know what people, again, I didn't read too much into it. I just saw that people didn't like this. They thought it was pointless to add this scene. I'm like, but it's finishing her story, like not even finishing her story. It is a continuation. Yes, she is dead, but she's in Valhalla, and that is part of it, is acknowledging that battle that she had that wasn't being beaten over the head with it.
Yeah, I also think it's another thing. I think inevitably, and I think Marvel's very, very smart about this. They're basically setting up a Peggy and Steve reunion for when we do have to say goodbye to Thor, right? The idea that most likely we're going to say bye to Thor in battle. He's going to go into Valhalla and he's going to be with Jane and Heimdall. Love that for him. I that's the moment I saw that, I was like, okay, cool. This is Jane not ever having to be back in the MCU until she gets paid a ridiculously large amount of money to kiss him, or it could be Chris Hemsworth's wife again, from behind. You know what I mean? It's just the idea of like, well, I mean, yeah, you would mirror that Peggy thing. It's like, oh, they have that dance, they would have that kiss or something like that in Valhalla, right? But the thing that bothered me about the Valhalla scene was not that she was there. It was the fact that Odin's son wasn't. Because to me, I'm like,
we don't know he's not there. Also, I don't think he deserves to be there, and he didn't die in battle. He's just Odin, by the way, not Odinson. Odinson is to Denmark, you're the son of someone. He's not the son of himself.
Damn it, I always like saying Odinson.
Yeah, he's Odin.
Okay, fair enough. But
like, he didn't die in battle.
That's true.
And also, he wouldn't deserve to be there. He was a shitty person.
Also very true.
Yeah.
I was just saying that from the perspective of like, oh, it's in the comics that Odin gives Jane the powers, so to have that acknowledged a little bit there would have been kind of cool. But you're very, very correct in the sense where, on a technicality, did not die in battle. He just basically like pieced out, like, hey, I'm quitting.
He lived his life. Yeah,
he lived his life.
Died of old age.
Yeah. I'm peacing out now. Cool. See you guys later. You have a sister, by the way. By the way. So much fun to see Matt Damon again in the Loki role. God damn it, he loves doing these like little cameo things. I love it. It's so good. I'm
not a fan of Matt Damon, but I am a fan of this character, especially when he comes back with Luke Hemsworth to be like,
yep.
Now, Valkyrie, this seems like a perfect time to be telling a story about this. And she's like,
yeah.
And he's like, I didn't hear a no. Like, there you go.
You're right. I don't like Matt Damon, but in these kind of situations where I'm like, oh, this is hilarious. You're like when he does that cameo in Deadpool, where he's like talking about using a hair dryer on his balls and like all that. I'm like, this is hilarious. It's so good that he would do that. But you're right. I don't care about him. in general, but it's funny.
I care about him. I just don't like him. I care in as much as I don't like that he keeps getting opportunities like this. But yeah, that's whatever. That's I think I liked that they brought back those players, like even Sam Neill. I liked that Melissa McCarthy was there because
boom.
Before the movie even started, I remember her doing a video being like, Taika, I hear you're also in Australia. We're in Australia. We're neighbors. I would like to play the role of love or thunder in your movie. She's like, I could be either one. And then she like did like, here's me as thunder. Here's me as. And I thought that was hilarious. I love that her husband got to be in it as well as the stage manager. But like,
I love that he gets like, he's like, it's the long run joke. He's like in everything that she's in, right? But the fact that they even kept it here too was awesome. Was absolutely awesome. It was so fun.
I liked the play, but the Jane stuff. So you didn't like that Odin wasn't there, but I wouldn't want him to be.
I thought Odin could have been there. I didn't think there was anything wrong with the scene. I was just like, oh, that could have been a place where Odin could have. But after hearing you talk about it, you're absolutely right. Heimdall should be the one that's like there because Heimdall's the only one that makes sense. Now, the other question ultimately ends up being, is Loki here? Because Loki technically died in battle. What the hell? This is my problem with Valhalla and the afterlife now. I'm like, okay, Loki Prime, the one we knew in
I would say this. I don't think it makes sense for everyone to be outside of the gates. He was just showing her like these are the gates to Valhalla and she's gonna go through.
Yes, but that was just me being like, in general, does that mean Loki Prime is here? You know what I mean? A question to be pondered by other people. Either way, I don't hate that. I think it's a good thing. I think it's genuinely, mark my words, I'm betting good money on this. A solid $5 that when Thor does retire from the franchise, that he will get that scene, and that scene is what sets up his welcoming to Valhalla after everything. I think the Warriors 3 are going to be there. There's no reason that they wouldn't. I feel like there's going to be a giant Thor reunion when he does die and leaves the battle. That's what I was thinking. I'm like, cool. That it provides no reason that we would see Jane again. No reason to me whatsoever.
No, she's out.
She done so, and that's okay. I'm glad she got to make the movie that she wanted to make finally. In the MCU.
I hope this is the one she wanted to make. Yeah.
Well, she's definitely seemed much more on board with the movie than any other movie.
As
that
I
she was a
said,
part of.
I never really thought she seemed not on board in Thor: The Dark World. I think that is the strength of her. Like, I understand she wasn't. I understand she was forced to. Yes, but I shever got the sense like, she's phoning it in.
Yeah, she is a professional at the end of the day. And I heavily appreciate that about her. But it seemed like she really wanted to do this. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh, I'm going to be a professional. I'm going to show up to work every single day instead of phoning it in. Great. But you like when someone's actually enjoying something. To me, the chemistry between Hemsworth and Portman in this movie was by far the best.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I guess I'm the only idiot that thought it worked in the first Thor as well. Like, I was like, I can feel like she's really into him. Like, I thought that worked, but I think the general consensus is it didn't feel like it was earned. I thought it worked.
Yeah. It worked for as much as it needed it to be. Yeah, but this is
I'm saying best. Like, I genuinely got the sense of like, oh wow, like she seems so into him. She really seems into him. The way the look she was giving him, the way they interacted, that was my sense. Like, just like, you know, when you're in high school and you're like, I wish a girl would look at me like that. Like, I think that was the sense I got from it. That there was a lot of nonverbal cues she was giving that made it seem like, wow, she's really into this guy.
Yeah, I also like, to me, like, she was into him the moment he was able to explain, like, hey, where I'm from, science and magic are one and the same thing.
Part of it. Yeah,
that's a huge part, because to me, I'm like, that was the one time someone else was able to relate to her in the language she knows, but being completely approachable about it. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna mansplain everything to you. It was like, oh yeah, where I'm from, this makes sense. and like it was like that to me was what sparked the love. It wasn't like, oh yeah, he's got his shirt off
because he was pronouncing things wrong. She was the one explaining to him like
yes,
Hubble telescope. Yeah, like but yeah, I think to your point, this is the most any movie has actually dedicated to their relationship.
Yeah.
So yes, it feels the best.
Yes, for sure.
I just think that they had a good starting point in the first Thor, like in terms of me believing that they, in contrast, like I didn't ever really get the sense that like Christine would be Doctor Strange's like one true love and that he loves in every universe. I was kind of like,
right.
Yeah, I mean, she certainly was there, but he's really being a dick to her, and she kind of just seems like, we're friends. I get it that they gave off a big like friend energy, like they had their time and that was that. But with Thor and Jane, I thought in that first movie, like it felt like okay, there's an attraction there. As you said, they could connect on certain things because of space Viking magic and her love of science.
Yes.
That seemed like that also brought them together beyond just the physical. And then Thor Dark World is what I mean, it is. I think that's also a big deal. He's like, I get to bring you to like you get to meet my mother and father. And I think that is a big deal, but
that is a big deal.
Sure, if you want to say like that didn't really work. And then you see in like Ragnarok that it is kind of throwing him off, that like we're not together anymore. And then by Endgame, it's like it's clear that this is really weighing on him heavy. Like it just felt like this they have a connection. Like it means something to him. This isn't that wasn't just another person he dated and then he feels like, wow, let me try and get back with her.
Because like in general, when people like, hey, I want to revisit next, you're either horny or you genuinely did love that person.
I guess I was trying to say that was it didn't just feel like he was horny. Before we get into gore, I want to say something that really worked for me every single time, much like the screaming goats, was the love triangle between Mjolnir, Stormbreaker, and Thor. I thought that was amazing. There's that scene where Korg is like, "What are you doing, man?" And he's funny. Like, it's in the aftermath of that big fight at night where Gore takes the kids, and instead of listening, Thor is just trying to summon Mjolnir. and Stormbreaker comes instead, and he's just like, yeah, this is what I was looking for. Yes. And then now he has to like check in with Stormbreaker sometimes, like, hey, I know this is weird with my ex here, but like that's in the past. Don't worry about it. And then finally, when they're on the ship, and he was just like, Mjolnir's or the lightning bolt, good for you, not my style, but good for you. You can have the lightning bolt. And he goes to like gives beer to Stormbreaker. It's like, here, I'm sorry. I know it's been weird.
I love that whole love triangle between the weapons. It was the funniest thing. It was that so really worked good. For me. I love that slow, like that one scene where Stormbreaker just like floats in and awkwardly stares at him, and it's just like that was the greatest thing in the world. I was like, what the hell?
It's when he picks up Mjolnir and he's like, oh, good, thank goodness, I'm still worthy. And Stormbreaker just comes in and he's just like, yeah. There you go. I thought that was good stuff. And
by the way, the upgrade to Mjolnir, that was cool as shit.
Mjolnir is really fun.
The breaking apart and reassembling and like just having these like little bits of like that was the coolest thing. It was so damn cool. I loved it. Because you're always like, hey, how is Jane going to be different than Thor? Because they're essentially it's the exact same skill set, and you're like, oh, the weapon's fundamentally very different. Very cool.
Yes. I thought that worked well. So Gore
the God Butcher.
So I really like him a lot, like Hela, though. I was like, I just wish there was more of him, or maybe even there was more of Hela. I can't even tell. It seems like there was more of Hela.
I feel like there was more of Hela because there's more backstory with Hela versus the backstory here was just like, oh, it's the opening scene. Cool. Yeah. It's very, very straightforward backstory versus the Hela one was like, there's layers of like, oh, you used to be imperialists and you used to be this, you used to be this. And now it's propaganda that your Daddy locked you away. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's multiple layers versus this one's very straightforward. It's like, you abandoned me, I gave everything to you, and now I'm going to kill you.
My favorite scene with him is obviously when he's trying to intimidate the kids. And he's like, look at this guy. He loves having his head ripped off. And he's like, oh, I mean, he did a second ago. And then and then you see again, starts off with humor until it gets real for him when he's like, oh, you remind me of a girl. And like the jokes are done now. He's I think I'll say it for the last time. Yeah, that obtuse thing of too many jokes. There's clearly a point to what's happening here.
Yes.
He's trying to scare these kids, and it's important that they're kids because his whole thing was he was protecting his daughter. He was protecting a kid. So he might feel a bit conflicted about what's going on here. He gets into it. He's deflecting with jokes. And yes, he's trying to intimidate. I think he's trying to build himself up as well. And then he kind of is like, I can't even deal with this right now. Like, and the truth just comes out.
Yeah.
And I thought like that was an amazing scene. And I'm not saying I wanted them to just keep cut and pasting that scene over and over again. I just was like, it made me feel like, wow, if they can do that in one scene, imagine what they could do with like more time with him. But I do think that like the Joker in The Dark Knight, at a certain point, he is just a force of nature. So you can't really spend too much time dwelling on him because that is what leads up to the end where it's like, well, now that they actually have time to talk to him, they're able to reason with him. I mean, yes, they also have to break the sword, but that's why it has to be at the end, because if you break the sword at a certain point in the movie, he's just gonna die, and then you don't have him. Yeah,
I feel my issue with Gore is that, like, okay, well, how much of you are you with the corruption of the Necro Sword, right? It's the idea of like the performance is genuinely terrifying. I love how it's so sporadic and like all that kind of stuff. You're right. That scene when he's scaring the kids, it's like I hate like when I hear people like, why did he steal the kids? I'm like, because without a doubt, that's the fastest way to get anyone to act irrationally. Because if you have a bunch of kids, people are going to be like, no, we got to save the children. And then they're going to act faster. Shooting. Yes, unless it's school. Ouch. Yeah. Ouch. That was very real, but very, very true. Get your shit together, America.
I mean, it's not just America, but yeah, I think
you're right. But like primarily America, because they're shipping your shit all over the world. And it has been that for a long time. Anyways, getting to that, the idea of like, yeah, of course he would use children. Like that's the fastest way to get people to act irrationally. That's the easiest thing you can control. Like imagine abducting a whole bunch of adults and trying to control
Asgardians.
That.
Yeah, it needed to be Asgardians. That was the point.
Exactly.
Because that's going to be, again, the most direct way to pull Thor into it, and so he can get Stormbreaker. Yeah. But like, I think, there was even a scene where they're like, we're just kids, like we're not, and like some of them, like, and I'm not even Asgardian, but like the idea that like, hey, like, yeah, we're Asgardian, but we're just kids. Like, and so if you kidnap a bunch of adult Asgardians, you're probably gonna have a bigger time. I also think that a part of it is you still would want the kids around because that's what you lost. Like I think to me, I never really looked at it as the sword corrupted him to the point where this is what he wanted to do, because it seemed like he was already there before the sword. I think the fact that God laughed at him and he saw like where he was like, oh yeah, bro, like I don't care, there's no reward for you, the whole point of you is to grovel at my knees, like that's what you're here for. Like that's the that already radicalized him. So it was just that the sword gave him the means to do what he wanted to do. True. It's keeping him alive, yes. And I think that if he didn't have the sword corrupting him to be evil in that sense, he probably would have taken more care with the kids, and he probably would have come off as more sympathetic when he had those kids. It probably would have been more like, I'm taking out of the equation that it was keeping him alive. I'm saying if he wasn't dying and he still had this mission, he probably you would have seen him like maybe connect with a kid or something like that. So yes, I think that's the sword's influence, is that he's not connecting with these kids and they are like just pawns. But like I never really saw it as like he only made this decision because he has the sword. I think it was more just like, this is powering it.
He knew he had to do something like this to get to, like, it was, his plan was very, very clear. Stormbreaker is a Bifrost portal. So the Bifrost portal will get you anywhere. It makes sense. And like, to me, I'm like, yeah, you steal kids. Kids are the thing that are going to get people the most emotional and get people to act the fastest typically. And then because that fear of children, I didn't know if Gore knew whether or not Axel was able to do the eye thing. I doubt it, but like, that's a faster way of being like, yeah, you're going to be more motivated because this is the son of your best friend too. Like all those kind of things. Everything about that made sense. So I don't know why people would shit on that. It makes no sense to me, but people are people.
People are like just off of MC, which is fine. I can still enjoy what I want to enjoy, but I can see that in general,
people are kind of burnt out after Endgame.
I don't even know if it's burnt out so much as not fully, because I think what they want is Endgame plus, like instead of letting, as I said at the beginning, letting this build back up to another Endgame. And I think
people are not patient for the rebuild aspect of it. They want to run it back immediately. I'm like, no, you can't run it back. It took 10 years to tell the story of Endgame. You can't do that in another movie. You got to set something up.
Yeah, so set up some stakes. I think
it's growing pains, y'all. That's what phase 4 is. It's growing pains.
I also think there are people that are kind of like, okay, Endgame, and then now I'm ready to shit on this popular thing.
Yeah, probably. Maybe.
I think
sucks to be them.
Podcasts of people, because there's a podcast I listen to called Newcomers, where it's two comedians who they are female, so it does, the things they cover skew a certain way because it's the whole idea is it's stuff they never watched or never engaged with. So they started off with Star Wars, they did Lord of the Rings, they did Fast and Furious. I can't remember what else they did, but they're on Marvel right now. Oh, they did Tyler Perry, I think. But yeah, now they're on MCU. They didn't do every movie, but like, it's interesting when you hear the guests come on. Some of them are people who like are in, like, there's the clerk from Loki was on. So he's like in the MCU. Cool. But like a bunch of people you just hear like, I kind of liked up until Endgame, or like just a couple of phases, and now I think they've kind of lost it. And I'm like, I guess that's just the popular thing to say now. Like I think
sure.
I don't feel the immediacy of what was leading into Infinity War and Endgame right now, but that makes sense because they told that story and now they're building back up to something else.
So here's what I will remind people of all the time when they say shit like that. So let's remember phase 1 for a minute. Phase 1, if you were smart enough to stick to the post-credit scene for Iron Man 1, then you would have had a hint of the Avengers. Now, at that point, when you're at the Avengers, everyone knows there's post-credit scenes. So then you see Thanos. The threat was built at the end of phase 1. It was built up at the end of phase 1, pure and simple. Why are people jumping to the phase 4 to be like, we don't know what the threat is, when yes, you do. It's Kang. It's been stated already that it's Kang. He hasn't shown up as much as you'd like.
To be fair to people who say they don't know, they specifically said Kang are the next Thanos. So that is a specific.
Did they really say that?
Yeah, I don't know if they met. Like, I don't remember who, but it was like an official person at Marvel being like, "No, Kang isn't the guy."
Well, that's so poopy.
That is. I already said it's clearly Secret Wars. That's what
I think so.
They've been dealing with is they're doing multiversal stuff, so that's going to lead to incursions. So I, to your point, like, so it doesn't really feel like Kang, because Kang's more time based. Yeah, and Kang doesn't factor into Secret Wars. But
sure.
But like,
maybe it's Doctor Doom. I don't know.
What I'm saying. Like, I don't really understand how people are being, again, obtuse about this. It's like, if you were smart enough to be like, ooh, the Avengers Initiative, which to be clear, like that wouldn't be the whole audience. That would just be people who care.
Yes.
Oh, Avengers Initiative. And then to see Thanos, who they don't even name at the end of Avengers, like, fine, I'll do it myself. Shit. Like, or no, that's Age of Ultron. But like, just him turning and smiling at the end of Avengers. Like, if you're able to piece all that together, how can you not piece it together now? Like in phase 4, I don't understand that.
Well, what I could, the argument I could give it to you for that is that they're clearly going into deep cut territory, right? Clea, a lot of these characters are not common comic book characters. Like, okay, we joke all the time that Iron Man was a B, arguably C level character before the MCU brought him up to the A tier or S tier or whatever you want to call it. But the idea there was that there was so much backstory with, there was a lot more public knowledge of these characters than there is about these new characters coming in. So like Clea, I don't know who the hell Clea is. You know what I mean? The Inhumans, like Black Bolt and all that kind of stuff in the multiverse of madness stuff like that. People don't know what the Terrigen Mist is realistically and how it's going to tie together here and whether Miss Marvel did do a Terrigen Mist kind of idea. It's everything here is so deep cut now that people are at the point where it's like, yeah, we're either going along with the ride or we're just like shitting on it because we don't know what's going on anymore. We're out of the loop. I think this is where the nerd and geek culture people are really, really in it now, and there's more of a divide because of that. But
I would push back and say they were always going to be the people that push that, right? Like,
fair.
My mom's not going to see Thanos and be like, oh, I know what that is. That's not something that was in the 60s cartoon for Iron Man. Like, she might know Iron Man, but she's not going to know that, right? So it would be someone being like, ooh, that's Thanos. That means this, this, and this. The same way, at this point, there's enough people that have seen a Doctor Strange movie that could start reading comics and be like, oh, Clea, when I was reading, that's this, or right? So like, I would push back against that. I think that it's going to be the same people pushing this stuff as well. It is a copy and paste, right? Like,
yeah,
sure, it's deeper cut, but more people have been pushed, more like that age group that would have been reading the stuff back in the 60s and 70s that knew for that movie. There would have been a whole new radicalized group of people that started in 2008 that would now be like, oh, well, when I was reading and I was doing this, these are these people, right? So that would always be the push, is that they're counting on those people to get other people excited.
That is true. And I'd like to think that we do a good job.
And that's the only reason that, like, I got excited about Secret Wars by listening to the people that were radicalized, being like, oh, well, clearly they're talking about this and this. And like, so I read Secret Wars so I can watch Doctor Strange and be like, well, we were already doing the multiverse, but like, this movie is introducing the characters other than Doctor Doom, but some key characters, Doctor Strange, Mr. Fantastic, and talking about Mr. Fantastic's kids and wife. They said specifically kids, so it was the very main characters in that Secret Wars character. They're
Franklin Richards, baby.
Yeah, like, they're hitting on all that stuff, and it's just like, what else would I think they're doing then?
Yeah,
like, this is clearly what they're setting up.
That's my problem with people. Everyone's like, what are they setting up? I'm like, why? Stop thinking of it as one thing. It's not Thanos. It's not. They're clearly moving towards something. They have a picture in mind. They know where they want to go. But trust the process. Trust. Like, this is what. Like, oh god, this bothers me so much because it reminds me so much about NBA talk and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, you can't just run it back every single time. Like, god damn it. To put together a championship team is such a difficult thing.
Yeah. So that's Gore. He's
so I'm glad you remembered what we were actually originally talking about.
I think he made sense. I wish that I had more time with him. I definitely didn't see the ending coming, that he would be like, I'm bringing back my daughter so that Thor can take care of her. And like, I've always said, like, that's a good thing about a sequel, or what makes a sequel good, is if you fundamentally change the character, which this movie does, or you go deeper, which Ragnarok does, which is like really, they always kind of hinted at it, but like really making Thor reckon with the imperial ways of his family. But this one is like, well, one, it changes him to open him up to loving an actual individual instead of a concept or a group. You think they're gonna go with Jane, but instead it's loving Gore's daughter, and like, that is who he's opening his heart, who he can continue to open his heart up to.
Right.
And I know he's not the father. She calls him Uncle Thor. That makes sense. It would be really weird if she called him dad, but like, he's still the father figure.
I mean, like,
yeah, she's old enough to know who her dad is. Like, she's not a 3-year-old. Like,
I get that, but I'm a bigger fan of people being like, I recognize you as the father role, and I'm going to address you as that. Like, to me, I'm like, yeah, there's biological children,
Uncle is fine,
but then there's adopted. I don't get me wrong, I like it, Uncle, but in this situation, I'm like, uncles aren't 24/7, bro.
They are.
That's a father. That's a freaking father right there. Thor is being daddy Thor.
I think that makes sense. And you can't speak for every uncle's experience, right?
You're right, I can't. But in that situation, I'm like, you're clearly being set up as a daughter. The uncle thing felt like a weird jab.
I don't agree with that at all. No, I think it's acknowledging what
that my
her
relationship
is, and especially if you know that your father sacrificed what he wanted to bring you back. Like, I do think it would actually be weird if the next scene she's calling him dad right away.
True. Fair. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I had questions for you about love. Do you think love has the power of eternity? Because when you see that reflection of love before she formalizes, she's basically taking on the same kind of character design, that galaxy aspect of eternity. Do you think eternity is somehow in her? That's okay. That's what I thought too, right? That's how I thought, like, this is how eternity makes the wish happen. It's like she's got to do this thing, and then it formulates, and it's a loading time, so to speak. But people are like, oh, is she eternity? I'm like, I hope not. That'd be stupid.
She could be. I mean, who knows, man?
Yeah,
we're wrong all the time on this.
That's true, but I feel like eternity turning herself mortal to be a child, to be a wish, would be stupid. Yeah. But either way, we're seeing eternity was badass. That was so cool. I liked it a lot. And the tribunal heads and all that kind of stuff. Very cool payoffs in that scene. A lot of Easter eggs.
One last thing I think we have to talk about, because it plays into the mid-credit scene, is the Omnipotent City stuff.
Yes.
Zeus.
Yeah, have we not talked about Zeus yet?
No, we haven't. It was fine. I think what it did a good job of highlighting was what I was talking about, which is the people that think like, this isn't my problem.
Yes.
And then the people actually in charge that are like, I mean, it is, but we're not going to get involved. Like, when Zeus kind of like comes up close to him and is just like, look, you are doing the right thing. You're doing a good thing. You're causing trouble for us, though. That's a bad thing.
Yeah, we don't need panic. Yeah, like, we don't need panic.
We don't want panic. And like, he's like, yeah, like, I get it. He's going to try and come for all the gods, but he won't find us. But now that you know where we are, he could find us by extracting that information from you. So you're gonna stay, and we're basically gonna put our heads in the sand. And as the movie was talking about again, I can't ever really fault a movie that feels so like connected to that theme that it's trying to do. That even a scene that some might find bloated or too funny still connects to that thing of like the whole thing they're showing you is they're putting their head in the sand. They're not opening themselves up. Yes. They are deflecting. So that's not the way to be. And I think that it works because as a group, they're all like, oh yeah, this won't affect us. And but then the person in charge who actually knows what's going on is kind of like, I mean, that's an Asgard problem. Like I mean, it will probably become, but it will become our problem much sooner if you're allowed to go off and do your thing.
Yeah. So, I think, the bureaucracy of what Zeus did there was very, very, very well shown off about like how some people are like, yeah, that's not our problem. Like it will be eventually that, but, and then how they actually keep their heads and perpetuate the propaganda of like, no, we're actually safe. Like they don't know where this is. We're safe. That scene was wonderful to me. Seeing Zeus portrayed the way he was by Russell Crowe was also great. Cause I'm like, they're going to lean into the fact that Zeus is just a horny asshole, right? Like That's all.
His big
his
public shaming is you're uninvited to the orgy.
Yeah, I do love that. He's like, all right, let's talk about the orgy and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, yes, that would make sense because Zeus, throughout all of Greek mythology, has gotten in trouble by not being able to keep it in his pants. Literally, like all the gods are basically bastard childs from Zeus. So love that they brought that aspect into it, and then also have the eccentricness of like the Jeff Goldblum's character of like the sex orgies and all that kind of stuff too. It's really funny stuff. I like it a lot. That's great.
Yeah, I think we haven't really talked about Korg because I was kind of like, Korg
is great.
I just like him. I was really weirded out when they killed him, and he's like, "No, I'm good." Like,
he's like, it's just a face now.
The only thing is just a face, but then you see him in full body again. I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like, he's just a fun character. I'm not just a fun character. He is getting to the root of the issue with Valkyrie and stuff.
Yes,
but he's a laid back guy, so I think I did not like him.
But I wanted to point out the greatest joke in the whole thing was delivered by Korg. The fact that his partner's name is Dwayne.
Oh, The Rock. Got it.
Yes. And I was like, I died of laughter when they did that. I was like, no, this is the best. I wish that they didn't put a mustache on Dwayne and just made him raise an eyebrow. I swear to God, that would have been the best thing in the world. But they didn't. Either way, I'm happy that they made that joke.
So yeah, that leads to Thor killing, or we think killing, Zeus with his thunderbolt or his lightning bolt.
It just pierces his heart, and like,
but he's fine, and he's fine in the mid-credit scene.
Yes,
he's licking his wounds, and he's telling his son Hercules that we got to make them afraid again.
Yeah, we got to make people afraid of gods again.
And that is like Brett Goldstein, aka Roy Kent from Ted Lasso, which is a great show, playing Hercules.
Yes,
another like, oh, they got this person to be a character that I don't think a lot of people know. But
yeah, I didn't know who he was at all. I was just like, I know who I know that was Hercules, but I was like, he's
part of
who
Civil
the hell
War.
That guy?
I think he's one of the people that dies in Civil War, not the movie, obviously, that like really makes people be like, shit. And I think Hercules actually replaces Thor at a certain point in the timeline on the Avengers as the strong guy, but then Tony makes a robot Thor during Civil War, and I think robot Thor either kills Hercules or Goliath, the Lawrence Fishburne character in Ant-Man and the Wasp.
Right.
One of those two, I think.
Yeah, because I know there is a robot Thor. Yeah, but
yeah, I think they are connected, Hercules, for obvious reasons about being gods or whatever. But like the or sons of major gods. But like I think I knew this post credits was gonna happen. I was kind of like, oh, I hope they build up to it, but they didn't. They didn't really build up to it. It's just kind of like, he's there, but I guess that's
there he is.
That's
what
Hercules
Hercules
the same
looks
as when
like.
The woman from Guardians of the Galaxy 2 was just like, oh, I created Adam Warlock, and you're kind of like, good. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing him. We will in Guardians 3, but so I was just like, whatever. They do this. This is fine.
Well, I mean, like I've read an article the other day that made me recognize the pattern that they're actually doing is that the mid-credit scene is now actually just introducing a new character and all that kind of stuff. And the final credit, the post, like the very last one, is either just a joke or actually giving you something.
Well, I think Multiverse of Madness is closure on something, but also a joke. Like obviously when he's just like, oh, it's done, and the movie's done, but also him punching himself is done.
Yeah, or like that. Oh God, I can't remember which one it was, but it was Chris Evans being like, "All right, you're at the end of the movie." I love that so much. It's like, you're at the end of the movie. Was it worth it? Did you find it? And I was like, yes, you trolled us so hard. It was great. I loved it.
But yeah, that's.
But Hercules,
Hercules.
Him and Thor are going to have
a
dick measuring contest at some point. That's what's going to happen. They're going to fight each other.
I mean, they have to.
They have to. Based on what Thor did, and Thor and Valkyrie, I mean, like they basically showed up in Omnipotent City and just like screwed shit up. They can't like live. They gotta like chase him down and be like, hey, we need our street cred back. We gotta have a turf war.
Yeah.
And that is Thor 5, maybe. But
maybe.
Yeah. We'll see what Hercules does in this. Because as far as I know, he's not that interesting. Boom.
I'm not interested in him.
That's yeah. I said that's what my thought. I'm like, oh, big deal. There's Hercules. Cool. They're just gonna fight
I like
each
the
other.
actor though, so I'm hoping that he gets stuff to do. And
I know nothing about the actor, unfortunately, but
yeah, Ted Lasso is a great show. He's the second lead on it.
I'm glad they didn't go with like, oh, here's the guy that looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger. You know,
I feel like
here's
he
Arnold
like
Schwarzenegger's body
the guy
double.
in the comics. Maybe not as big, but I think to your point, he's not as big as Arnold Schwarzenegger. But I think the visual was there. They got it.
What I meant was like, oh, they didn't go with a giant bodybuilder. They went with an actor. You know what I mean? It's just like, oh, okay. I always hate I love Arnie movies, but the acting is very limited for a very good reason. He's not an actor. He's a bodybuilder that you gave lines to. Whatever.
Yeah. I would push back. I think
he turned into an actor. I get that, but I'm just saying.
I think he's very funny. I think what's holding him back is that he can't use his mother tongue. But I think I think he's actually not. I'm not saying like, oh, this guy should win Oscars. I'm saying I think he knows his range, and I think he works well in it.
He grew into the role, absolutely. But what I'm saying is like, I'm just glad they didn't go with that kind of actor where it's like, oh, he's a bodybuilder first, and then because I'm like, no, he's a lead. I want it to be an actor, and that could get jacked for a role, whatever it would be. What I mean, either way, I'm glad that you're praising him for being the guy. Apparently,
okay. This is. I think we have spoiled this movie enough. Do you want to rate it, or do you have something else to say?
I want to rate it.
All right. Okay, go for it.
I'm giving this 7 screaming goats out of 10.
Excellent. I'm giving it a 7.5. I think there's strong stuff in here, but it didn't feel as
cohesive as Jinx. Which is a terrible thing to do on a podcast.
There's no jinx here. I think I didn't really lean into the stuff, so it sounds weird. I think there's a lot of strong stuff here that overpowered some weird stuff that happens in the movie. But it only got it to a 7.5. But I think it's a strong 7.5.
It is a strong 7.5.
It might grow on me. It might feel worse upon reviewing. But my initial thought is, for me, it's a strong 7.5.
Yeah, the important thing is that we enjoy the ride. The next questions now are, how big is this Kids Avenger roster going to be? Now we got Kid Heimdall, we got Kid I can't say Kid Thor because that's obviously we got Love. We got like all these kid characters now. I think that kid universe of the Avengers is going to be giant now. It's going to be ridiculous. It is. It's giant. Let's see what the kids get, because the kid Thors, that was friggin' wild. That was so much fun. Did not know Thor had the power to do that.
I like that he made a point of saying for a limited time only.
Yes, because I'm glad he recognized how irresponsible giving all those kids all that the power of Thor for the rest of their lives would be. But that was a fun scene to watch all the kids go ham. It was awesome.
Well, thank you very much for listening, everybody. We are part of the That Shelf Podcast Network with other great shows like Bad Gay Movies, Black Hole Films, Changing Reels. So please go to thatshelf.com. You'll find those shows, our show, more shows. If you want to hear older episodes of Spoiled Rotten, please go to tdfeverything.com/spoiledrotten. Our email is spoiledpodcast@gmail.com. Our Twitter is @tdfspoiled. And we're on all the different podcast platforms: Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Radio Public, Apple Podcasts. So please rate, review, follow, subscribe, whatever they're asking you to do, and comment, share with your friends. And also let us know what you thought of the movie and us. I want to know if you like us. All right. Bye-bye.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't.
I was joking with that.
Because I'm afraid to hear the answer. Deflection. Cheers.
Bye.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.